Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. Today, let's talk about the Lavon Affair. Have you ever heard of this before? If you have heard of it before, why haven't you put it in the description so I can research this? I just found out about this scrolling around on Gab Social, right? And so basically, this is going to be a group of terrorist attacks by not Israelis. Well, Israel government was behind it, but they were Egyptian Jews. And they're doing terrorist attacks on American and British targets because they don't want the British to pull out and give Egypt sovereignty to rule over themselves and have the Suez Canal. So they decided to start, blowing up American and British stuff, right? Pretty interesting story. Now the story is going to have two different important things going on, right? So if you look at, we did an episode on Israel was founded on terrorism. The King David Hotel bombing, I'll put that as the first link below. And we also did USS Liberty. So we're talking 40s and we're talking 60s. And now we're going to go to the 1950s and we're going to go to 1954, right? And so it's this link of this continuous action of using terrorism to gain their political ends at the expense of Americans, right? And the other angle that's interesting on this, I have the USS Liberty is the second link below. Another interesting angle, I did an episode on, which will be the third link below, and it will be called Multiculturalism Leads to Treason, right? And there I covered the Rosenbergs, Jews in the U.S. who gave away our nuclear secrets and were hung for it, for treason. And this is like, they were hung 1 year before this happens, right? And so the interesting part of the story is that the people were Egyptian Jews. They weren't Israelis, right? They were these people that Egypt had allowed to live within their borders, and they end up doing terrorism to the disinterest, to the worst interest of Egypt, right? Because multiculturalism doesn't work. So if you haven't seen that episode, you could check that out, okay? So let's get into the actual story here, okay? If you look, there's only one reference below, and it will be this reference. This is the Jewish Virtual Library, which I use a lot. It's a very pro-Jewish site, so I'm not giving you any crazy information that's not just publicly available and well-known. And so you can check that out below. I'm going to use this where I just transferred it all so I can highlight stuff and it'll save me on editing time, right? Here's what it says. The Lavon Affair is a spy story in Israel's early years that left a nasty mark on the young state with reverberations for the following 20 years. Its name derived from Israeli Defense Minister Pinhas Lavon, though that's funny, though also referred to as Esek Habish or the Mishap, revolving around nearly a dozen young Egyptian Jews who agreed to spy for Israel against their home country, Egypt. The affair taps into a story of idealism and self-sacrifice, as well as abandonment and an unwillingness to take responsibility. Okay, you can see how they're writing this. That this is they're just putting a lot of spin on it. So basically, what happens is this is telling the end of the story right here. If you want to read all that, you can. I like to read the end of the story at the end of the story. So they have these guys who go, these Israelis who go there and start recruiting Egyptian Jews, right? The espionage story began in the very early 1950s when the Israelis sent an undercover agent to Egypt by the name of Avraham Dar. He went by the name John Darling, posing as a British citizen of the island of Gibraltar. He taught the Egyptian Jewish spy ring about underground organizations and conspiratorial tactics. They learned how to make delayed action devices, letter bombs, and the intricacies of photography. In early 1952, most of them secretly came to Israel to learn sabotage and underground techniques. Most of them fell in love with Israel and vowed to do whatever they could to help. That's funny because they do that to American kids too. American kids who have Jewish parents, they send them on free trips there, hoping they'll fall in love with a foreign country. And then if they're ever needed, they're going to be more loyal to Israel than to wherever they came from, the United States, just somewhere in the West, I'm just going to guess. At a farewell party for the small number of Egyptian Jews who participated in the course, they decided to call what they would be called upon to do Operation Susannah. It was partly in jest named after Victor Levy's fiancée, whose name was Susan Kaufman. She went with him to Israel and stayed. The spies were to return to Egypt, and they would know when to go into action when they would hear an Israeli radio broadcast of the American song "O Susanna." So this is state-sponsored by Israel. We're gonna get more details. Now this is funny because this guy Abraham Siedenberg, right? He takes over for the other guy whose also name was Abraham. Yeah, Abraham Dar. So this is Siedenberg now, right? So he takes over the spy ring, and he's a little bit disgraced because he has little to lose. He had been caught looting Arab property during Israel's War of Independence. I didn't know you get punished for that. That's pretty funny, though, I thought. Okay, listen to this. This is hilarious. Siedenberg was first sent to Germany to establish a false identity as a former SS officer by the name of Paul Frank. He successfully infiltrated the ranks of the underground former Nazi network. He set out for Egypt in early 1954, his new identity established. So he sent this guy to Germany to get his Nazi persona going, right? So what? So the Nazis did this? You know what I mean? So that they could blame the Nazis for this? That's insane, right? Pretty comical. And if you read the rest of this article, all the people who are in Israeli intelligence, they're constantly going back and forth between Germany. They're just, I'm sure, to do terrible, terrible things. Okay. So on July 2nd, 1954, they went into action. They first blew up some post offices, and a few days later, the American libraries in Cairo and Alexandria. These operations were to make it clear to the whole world that Egypt's new rulers were nothing but a group of foolhardy extremists, unreliable and unworthy of taking charge of an asset as important as the Suez Canal. Furthermore, it was to be demonstrated that their grasp on power was uncertain, that they faced powerful internal opposition, and consequently, they were unworthy of being counted upon as a dependable ally. So they're blaming just random communists, and they're also blaming the Muslim Brotherhood. Mostly is mostly who they're trying to frame for this. Okay, Robert Dassa was one of the first spies to be caught. Philip Nathanson was caught soon after when, on the way to blow up a cinema in Alexandria, the bomb he was carrying in his pocket ignited and then exploded. What was a particularly alarming factor was that outside of the theater, a fire engine was waiting as if expecting them. Philip had the distinct feeling he was being watched. It turned out that he had been. So now the story goes on, and it turns out that the Egyptian authorities knew that this was going to go on, right? And so these American libraries, it says a few days later, the American libraries in Cairo and Alexandria, not really true because it says first blew up. And from what I gather, basically they took nitroglycerin and wrapped it in like an acid thing and then they put it in books or behind books. And then they did it right at closing time. Then hours after the library closed, the acid would eat through the bag and ignite the bomb. And so they were more like arsons, from what it looks like to me. So, and then this bomb here, where Robert Dassa was caught, whatever his name is, was caught. This was a phosphorus bomb that he was gonna blow up a cinema, it says. It was white phosphorus. I don't know exactly the nature of white phosphorus. Okay, this is funny. So when they were being questioned, nobody's giving up the information, right? Everybody's holding strong in the whole little terrorist group they got, right? And then it says they maintained that they were communists who wanted the British imperialists out of Egypt. I thought that was pretty funny. Fall back on the communism thing. But they're all trying to frame communism. This even earned them the admiration and respect from the Egyptians, who also wanted the British out. That is, until Azar, who was constitutionally incapable of telling a lie, nonsense, admitted that they were Jews and Zionists working on behalf of Israel. Siedenberg managed to escape on August 5th, 1954, but the rest of the network, except for Nino, was arrested. Now, if you look on Wikipedia, it'll tell you that 2 people escaped, not 1. So this isn't the full story, but it's close as I can get it, okay? And so I don't know why he was constitutionally incapable of telling a lie. It sounds like nonsense, okay? In Israel, Siedenberg got a hero's welcome as the only member of the network who had gotten away. So the terrorist who got away and the one who was in charge of the plot while the terrorist activity happened, because that other guy was in charge of the plot before they actually did bombings. This guy gets celebrated as a hero. Pretty funny, right? I mean, you could just... Okay. The trial, so they went on trial now in 1956 in Egypt, right? 2 of them have committed suicide. 2 of them are going to be executed after the trial. The trial went on for 2 weeks. As a show trial, it was staged for 2 purposes. Abroad, it was to stress the story that Israel tried to undermine Egyptian-American friendship. At home, it would show that the regime's severity was not confined to the Muslim Brotherhood alone. I like the way that this article, because it's a pro-Jewish article, it says, as a show trial. Was the Rosenberg trial a show trial? They committed treason, you know what I mean? But is that a show trial? But just because they're Jews? I don't know. The trial was given unusual publicity. The press emphasized again and again how dangerous the Israeli spies were to Egypt and demanded severe punishment. They're terrorists. You caught terrorists. Naturally, they emphasize again and again how dangerous spies in your country who are of your nationality, Egyptian, even though they're Jewish, you know? So whatever. Okay, the Egyptians, aware that the United States had hung the Rosenbergs, American Jews who had spied on behalf of the Soviet Union responded, quote, Egypt will treat its spies in precisely the same manner adopted by the United States, end quote. Marzouk and Azar were hung in early 1955. I thought that was interesting. So the Rosenberg thing is just happening, But the Rosenberg thing was public enough that that had just happened a year before. Well, a year before the attacks, 2 years before this. So that was pretty interesting, I thought. Anyways, and then like this woman got sentenced to 15 years in prison. Other people got different sentences. And then there was I didn't really highlight it, but like right here, there was a 1956 war, right? And Israel held 5,000 Egyptian prisoners after the conquest of Sinai. So Israel traded them all for one Israeli pilot. Israel did not even ask for the spies. It's not clear why this is the case. Either Israel did not want to ask and thereby admit the involvement in the affair, which could have endangered Israel's relation with the United States, or the Israelis simply did not want to get involved. Okay, pretty funny. So then Ben Gurion is thinking that something's amiss here, right? But then Pinchas Lavon, the defense minister at the time, who was named after the Lavon Affair. Yeah, I don't know why I second guessed that. He gets declared not guilty of authorizing the operation. Everybody involved in the operation, like the director of military intelligence, the defense minister, everybody gets, removed from office. Okay, so now this is about their release, okay? In March 2005, nearly 40 years after their release from Egyptian prisons, the last surviving members of Operation Susannah, Ninio, Dassa, and Zafran, were given military ranks in the IDF in recognition of their service to Israel. So it was ordered at the time by Israel, even though that one guy was acquitted, right? And then, look at, in 2005, they're honoring them for attacking American and British targets. That's your best ally in the United States, Americans. I mean, in the Middle East, Americans. Okay, this is funny. A document released in 2015 excerpted the diary of Nehemiah Argov, Ben Gurion's military secretary. If you don't know who Ben Gurion is, he's the first prime minister of Israel, and he led the military during the Nakba, war criminal. On October 18, 1954, he wrote, quote, "We set up a unit that could have been a terror unit and a commando unit behind enemy lines in the deepest heart of enemy territory. And who knows what crucial and decisive missions these guys could have fulfilled during an emergency." Argo said Lavon made a mistake by having the operatives attack some British objectives to create the impression that the Muslim Brotherhood was responsible. He added the decision should have been a political question, not a security one. Okay, so that's basically the story. And so I think it's pretty interesting, right? This is the way Israel operates. And I had said in a previous episode, I said I made this comment and I said something about Jews not being able to self-govern, And I was talking to Victor about that the other day, and he says, "I think you're wrong." He's like, "You're thinking like you're not thinking like a Jew, right?" Because to them, he said it like this: their strategy of government is all in every single time. And it's like, that's really foolhardy. All in, like attack the U.S.'s liberty. What if the U.S. breaks with you? What if this Lavon Affair, the U.S. breaks with you, right? But they do all in every time because Victor says, if you think like a Jew, they're thinking they're these superhumans around all these dogs, And so they try ridiculous things all the time. And like this is just absolutely ridiculous, And so I thought it was interesting. I'm creating this body of work. Like I just referred back to 3 different episodes related to this one. And now I've got 4. Next time you guys put something interesting in the description, or I find something on Gab and I make another episode similar to this, talking about some historical event that's just insane, against America's best interest, and can't understand for the life of me why anybody in the United States, except for all the congressmen funded by AIPAC, and then Jews, of course, support Israel. It's complete nonsense. Anyways, if you guys are following on Locals, because nobody's going over to Locals, if you guys follow on Locals, you would have already known about this story because I put a video in there that I found off of Gab, so I just uploaded it to, it's not mine, it's somebody else, like a 3-minute documentary about this. I got some other interesting stuff on there. I got this Japanese newsman, and they just start talking about something, and the guy's like, "Oh, you don't understand? It's because Jews in America control all the media, they control the government, and he just starts going down the list, and it's funny, it's interesting because over there it's just common knowledge, you could just speak about these things, and I think it's pretty interesting. Anyways, I got some other stuff over there. So I got an episode for you. If this is Wednesday's episode, then I got no more episodes for you this week. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow. If this is Monday's episode, then I got an old episode that I filmed on Wednesday. Today's my kid's birthday. I just don't have time to film more. So basically, and I'm taking this new job, and I I don't get days off at the first, and so I'm to have time to do a ton of research, and but basically I'm gonna have to work for 10 days straight at the very first time. So I don't think there's gonna be any videos next week. If this is your Wednesday video right now, then I'm gonna have one old episode that I'll play on Monday, and then no episodes till the following week, which then I will have videos because I'll have plenty of time to do research when I'm away from home for that long. Anyways, that's what I got for you. Hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. See you next time.